All right. So, welcome everyone back to the podcast. We are live and back.
Yeah,
Al, I missed you, man.
I miss you too, man. Had a few weeks off because of travel, but all good, man. We're back. We're back in the pilot seat.
Nice. So, travel. I think that's the discussion today. It is travel because we are in the summer season, as well. It is graduation season, so that means people are traveling all over the place for work. And before you get started, and anyone listening to this is like, "Oh no, this is going to be talking about the outages in Newark and Atlanta." No, we're not talking about that today. We are going to acknowledge it, but that's not the conversation today. We're talking about people traveling this episode.
Travel safety, travel security, and all the ins and outs and all the above. So
Right. So, as many of you are aware, people travel, across the globe for work, let alone for vacations. And so there's always a lot of different considerations to be thought about. And we thought it'd be fun to talk about it as, in this episode, or in all our episodes, it's all about talking about risk and how it impacts physical security, cybersecurity, operational security, how it impacts the business. And so this week we're going to be focusing on that.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm very passionate about this because I've traveled quite a bit.
I think you and me both, we just accumulate miles when we have to go on the road for, long spurts at a
Yeah,
time.
and then previous role, I was an operations director for a rescue insurance company where we actually we rescued people in bad situations and then provided travel safety and security advice and did travel walkthroughs, safety walkthroughs, and supported EP teams. So I've seen I've seen this coin fully, both sides and around the rim as well. So I'd say that, this is definitely something that both of us have extensive experience in. So
Well, I'm going to be jokingly saying this, but you're the reason why the Nissan CEO was able to get out of a certain country.
true. That's very true. Very true. So, um, you know, just just saying, just saying. So, but yeah, I think when it comes to this stuff, a lot of people, I don't think when it comes to travel in general, there's a lot of assumptions, right? We generally assume that the airline's going to handle a lot of stuff. We generally assume the airport's going to handle a lot of stuff, or that DHS, or TSA, excuse me, is going to handle things. The hotel's going to handle. We just have an assumption that things are being handled, and most people have the mindset. I'd say the majority of people, they travel kind of for vacation purposes, or short trips. But yeah, I think when you assume too much, especially in 2025, it can be dangerous for lots of different reasons. Um, and I've caught myself in this trap multiple times. You and I were actually having a discussion in Vegas back in April under an IC West about, man, I really need to get a better charger because I assumed that I could charge in the airplane, and the model of plane that I got didn't have a plug or a charger. So my backup battery, I basically just depleted my backup battery. So thankfully it was a short flight, right? But I assumed the plane was going to have a charger, right? I assumed the airport, I'd be able to charge at the airport. And that led to not a very good experience when I got to Vegas and my phone was at 2%. And I was freaking out about how I'm going to get this thing charged because I didn't get a rental car. I got to take Lyfts and Ubers everywhere, and my phone's not working. So, happens to the best of us, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuances, considerations. I mean, we could. I mean, there's just so much to think about um, when it comes to travel these days because uh, you know let's just be honest. I mean, I'll make another acknowledgement. With anything that happens in the summer, you can have big weather, technical difficulties. You have to think about your regular operations, where your personnel is going to be, how are you going to get them to point A to point B safely. Think about what about the knowledge that they have? What operations are they holding? I mean, there's just so many items, so many things to think about that it's just really challenging to think about. What can you do? Where does it go? How does it, impact the business? What happens if they're supposed to come back on Tuesday and they come back on Thursday because they extended and not they intentionally extended out their trip, but rather their flight goes technical and uh, with the number of just shortage of planes, accidents, whatever, it's not like you can go, hey, I'm going to jump on the next plane. It takes time for you to get back from point A to point B.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, you probably could have just caught the next flight and been okay. Like those days are over. Not sure when they're coming back, if they come back. But the travel dynamic, I think since COVID has been very challenging. I mean, we went from, I think, pre-COVID 2019. Um, you could it wasn't uncommon to be on like a semi-empty plane, or having multiple seats available. Good luck now. And I speak from experience on this. I mean, I take about close to about 70 flights a year. And you break the math down, it's almost one flight a week. And so I mean, I'm in the air quite a bit, and I've been kind of a professional traveler for quite some time. And I mean, I don't think in 2023, 2024, 2025, I have rarely been on a plane where there's a seat empty next to me. You know, I, I could probably count the times on my hand where that's happened. And typically when that does happen, it's because the airline needs that plane at another airport for a subsequent flight, and they've got to move the plane, and they're probably taking a loss on the flight, but they got to get that plane to the other airport, and so they try to get some people to get on the plane so they can make a little bit of money on it to offset the loss. But that has been far and few between. 2019, I traveled quite a bit in 2019. It wasn't uncommon for me to, if I needed to change a flight, and you know what, I'm in a conference call at the airport. Call's gonna go long. I'm just gonna change my flight while I'm on the call catch the next one, and I'll definitely have an extra seat. That has not happened for me in about 4 years. I mean, pretty much had to pivot around the set travel times, and I think that's a lot of factors that contribute to that. Part of it is the airlines have been taking a beating when it comes to all the all the aviation incidents me and Josh have talked about in previous podcasts. The price of fuel is a big factor in that as well. It's a variable cost for the airlines. So the more expensive the gas is, the fuel, it's more expensive to operate. Additionally, we've had strikes of airport workers, maintenance staff, airline employees, flight attendants, pilots. So that's put pressure on the industry, which creates a dynamic now in 2025 where traveling is not really as pleasant as it used to be. For some of us who traveled previously, it's not a pleasant experience to the level that it should be. And I think there's if you're approaching a travel scenario, I think you really got to do some planning more so than you would have normally done in previous years. Furthermore, a lot of systems have been automated now, so you're not even able to really talk to a human to get the problem solved. So that makes things a little bit more challenging because a lot of times the agents and the travel agents on the phone can solve your problem pretty quickly. They have access to the system. A lot of that's been kind of, gone the way of the dinosaur, unfortunately. Automation isn't always better, is all I can say.
Right. Like that was one of my experience with FedEx recently. Just, call agent. Oh, well, I can help you. Agent. No, I can help you. No, agent. I need to talk to your agent.
Really
I can help you.
Yeah. Please have me talk to a human, please.
So no, is always the response I always get. I'm like, ugh. But let's start focusing let's focus on some of the details here. So let's talk about the operational aspects of things, especially People, let's just be honest, when you go and work these days, how often are you really disconnected from work?
Not much.
Not much.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. We talked about it on the market forecast a few weeks ago. I mean, we are in an unprecedented time in the current job market where people are doing. Unfortunately, we're losing employees, right? We're losing either through natural attrition, layoffs. Um, we're losing. A lot of companies are losing employees, which means the employees that are remaining are having to take on extra work, typically without extra pay, which means even if you are planning on going on vacation, you're likely going to work 1 or 2 hours on vacation. I think that's a pretty standard, if not more. Some people are just working from the PTO location and then fitting in family time and fun time when they can. But I don't think there's any one of us in the workforce right now that's truly disconnected. I mean, it's just the reality of 2025 right now.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing, at least I've been experiencing, is that when I traveled even recently for vacation, I at least clocked in a couple hours just every morning just to make sure like certain things don't pile up, or there's at least took a quick read and look through things just to make sure, nothing's on fire that requires my immediate attention.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the speed of business right now too. I mean, it hasn't slowed down, despite the fact that we've had attrition in the job force. So there's certain things that you have to address, even if you're trying to take some time off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a reality of all of us, right? So, I think the important thing, really important, is to understand, like, across your travel plans, where are you going? What is available there, right? I traveled to a lot of big cities for work. So, Atlanta, Dallas, Tampa, Miami, DC, San Francisco, LA. Those airports are, they're kind of tailored to business customers. There's usually a lounge, there's usually internet, Wi-Fi. I can get work done while I'm there if I'm stuck, if I had a travel delay, and I'm well versed in that exercise, right? Like I've experienced that several, multiple times, so I know how to handle it. But um, I think it's important that anyone who's traveling, especially if you don't travel frequently, like you and I, it's understanding what lounges are available, right? What's the lounge fee? Some of these lounges require a fee to get in if you're not a member, but it's an option available to you, right? If you get hit with a travel delay, like Liberty Airport the last 2 days has been experiencing some serious issues, right? A lot of travelers get stranded, right? Okay, Sunday night, you're anticipating being in the air, getting back home for that Monday morning meeting, and now you're stuck at the airport. What are you going to do, right? How are you going to mitigate that? So there's a couple things, right? Like I mentioned in the lounges, there's also how did you pay for the flight? Like American Express and some of the Chase travel cards have benefits if you book travel using their card. There's benefits on the card that if you say you get stuck or your bag gets lost or you need to get a hotel for a night because the flight was delayed, they can actually assist you with that. And a lot of times it's covered. It's covered for you, right? But if you don't know that, what are you doing? You're making a 3-day trip, a 4-day trip, and you're paying even more money. So it's important to kind of understand where you're going, looking at what benefits you have as a customer of some of the payment methods and even some of the airlines. Some of the airlines have benefits, understanding the terms and conditions of the flight. Um, there's certain things that airlines have to do because the FAA said if this is your fault, you owe the customers X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, a lot of airlines don't broadcast what your bill of rights are or what they owe you. You have to ask for it. You have to be proactive and ask for it, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing is just fully knowing like where you're going, how you paid, who you're flying with, and knowing all your options before you get to the airport. Because when the crisis hits, trying to get on the airport Wi-Fi and read the terms and conditions when you know you're not going to get to where you're going and the stress is building up, it's not good. And unfortunately, and I love my airport workers, I really do, because they've been very helpful to me sometimes. But when you show up to talk to the gate agent and there's a line of 100 people behind you who also want to talk to them about a travel issue,
Yeah, like a flight gets canceled.
yeah, the gate agent, it's typically not their fault, number one. Number two, they have limited information and they have limited ability to help you. And again, most of the time you get great service, but in situations like that, they're trying to get you an answer and get you out of the way because they got 99 other people they got to deal with too, who probably have the same questions. So I wouldn't count on the airline staff or the airport staff to give you the answers that you need in those situations. The better option is typically just to call the airline directly if you have the ability to, and talk to an
Good
agent.
luck in this day and age.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck.
It's
Good
actually
luck.
faster to queue than it is to go on than
Understand,
call.
understand. On a summer travel day, like with almost 40-50% more travelers than normal, you're going to be listening to that terrible hold music for probably about 20, 30, sometimes an hour. Um, you know, waiting to talk to somebody for them to tell you that they can't solve your problem. So these are all things that you're going to deal with, that especially if you don't have status, if you don't have a status with the airline or the lounge or or the airport, it becomes very frustrating because of very frustrating travel.
It does.
And so things to consider, right? Like if you don't have status with an airline, you don't have status with a hotel, understand their priority is the members who are higher status, and they are going to get the priority because they're spending thousands upon thousands of dollars with that business recurring, every year, and they want to retain those customers, right? So you got to understand that, and it's not anything personal. It's just that's just the reality. um the other thing is too is I would say a lot of people don't realize this, but if you're flying multiple legs, like say you don't have a direct flight and you get stuck, say in Chicago, but you're trying to go to like New York or Miami or something like that, where the weather is going to be different. Do you have a jacket? Do you have a raincoat? Do you have closed toe shoes? Admittedly, I travel very low key, flip flop, shorts, t-shirt. When I'm on the plane, I like to be comfortable, and I'll have a change of clothes in my backpack, and I'll change over when I get to the airport. Um, but I always have a puffy jacket in my backpack too, and a set of socks, a headlamp, a first aid kit, because I've been stuck in so many airports with different weather patterns that I got to make sure that just in case I get stuck there for more than one day, I can actually go out to the city or wherever I'm at and not have a miserable time.
Yeah, I was just reminded of the fact that when I in at my previous firm, I was traveling for them. I got stuck in Columbia, South Carolina. Beautiful place. Like, but I didn't mind. I normally I wouldn't mind getting stuck because like yeah, I'm I don't have anywhere to go. It's a Saturday and everything like that. That typically that my reaction, but I actually had somewhere to be that Saturday morning, so that Friday when I was commuting back and my plane went tech. It lost hydraulics, and then the my colleagues' planes were going through Chicago, and they had summer storms rolling right through. Yeah, all of us were pretty much stuck at that point.
Yeah.
And I thought I beat it too. I was like so happy. I was like, I think I made the smart decision, and I was like, I'm able to actually, stay in, go through Houston and everything. Yeah, it turned out it didn't matter in that case. Um, but I think it also varies too because thinking about all the travel that we're also doing, um, what should be with you and what shouldn't be with you. And if anything, also too is depending who you are too, what should you be bringing from work? So I always have concerns about, especially this day and age, is when you leave the contiguous 48. Let alone Alaska and Hawaii. Like some people are okay with that, but I'm generally nervous when you start leaving the contiguous 48, and that's mainly because when you know start taking company gear, the question is like, okay, who has access to it?
Yeah.
My personal thought also would be, it doesn't matter. The second you should go on vacation, you should have generally a laptop that is assigned to you by work for vacation purposes.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's no sensitive documents. If the laptop gets stolen, okay, so the laptop gets stolen, who cares? The whole point is just to check some emails and just to do some very light work. You don't need a very powerful machine. You just need something just strong enough to actually do some very very basic work. Because the goal here is you're supposed to be on vacation. You're supposed to be disconnected. If you're literally changing offices and moving to another location in the world to do work, 48 states or not. That's really not a vacation in my book. That's just simply changing your scenery.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and that's a really good point on well, I mean, just in general, like Wi-Fi networks at other places, right? I mean, you, you don't know what's on there. You don't know who's in the terminal. You don't know who's trying to rip your data. Um, and so I think you gotta kind of understand that. Like, it's normal for me to have two laptops and two phones. I know, yeah, during the walkthrough for you over in ISC West, you might have had three phones that broke the system, which was awesome.
Hey,
But
that's my goal. Break things.
I always say like what's necessary and what's unnecessary, right? Like when I go on vacation, I generally, and I don't go on vacation very much, but I generally try to unplug. I try to leave everything I can electronic, back at home. I take a phone. I take a second personal phone that typically isn't my primary, but it can route to my primary. Um, and I use that because if I'm traveling international to Mexico or Thailand or something like that, I don't know what's on the network. I don't know who's on the network. I don't know what people are seeing. So a sanitized phone is, for me, it's pretty normal. There's not much on there. The only thing that they get is what I pictures that I take while I'm there, and a few phone calls here and there that I might make. But typically, I'm unplugged. Now, when within the United States, you're generally safer, right? You're still not. You're never going to be 100%, and you're probably safer if you're traveling within the United States. But um, it's important to understand that, right? It's important to understand like you don't know who's in the terminal. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're, what they have on their phone, and potentially what that network, has that airport invested in cybersecurity. What kind of cybersecurity protocol do they have?
Yeah,
Um,
I'm usually not worried about that. I'm usually worried more so about your Airbnb or your
yeah,
hotel because you walk away and you're gone for X amount of hours. Let's just be honest, the door lock or anything that you're using for the hotel and everything with the key card, yeah, it is, to you locked, but to me it is an open door because it's not
yeah.
it's
No,
not deadbolted.
if you think that your hotel room is safe because it's got a
Close.
lock on the door, right? I would
Yeah.
say that's if you think the safe in the hotel is secure because you put your own code in. I'm telling you guys, it's not. And this is a big thing too. Like people bring valuables on vacation. They want to look nice. They bring in jewelry or they bring expensive camera equipment or whatever. I think you have to be very leery. I mean, about why you're bringing it, what you're bringing it for. I still have scuba diving, so I'd have GoPros with me, right? But I typically bring that GoPro with me, so I'd have it on my persons pretty much at all times when I was diving. And then when I was, if I was going to be in a hotel room, I had a lockbox for it. I'd lock it, stuff it under a bunch of clothes in my bag, and it's still not safe per se because someone could come in there and rummage through my luggage. and find it, find a lockbox and say there's probably something important there and take it. But the point is that, I'm making it harder for someone to find something of value. I don't really wear anything. Another thing is people wear nice clothes, out on vacation, jewelry, nice watch. And look, I know that's important. People want to like, you've got nice stuff, you want to show it off. Got to be leery though, because sometimes you draw unwanted attention to yourself. The other thing is, how do you pay for things, right? Typically people are using their phones a lot more, right? They're using, Apple Pay, Zelle, all this other stuff. A lot of places outside of the US, they're actually going to prefer Zelle, Venmo, Cash App. It's kind of the preferred method because, both parties, you don't want to carry a lot of cash with you because now you're making yourself a target. And then they don't, the vendor doesn't want to have a bunch of cash on them because now they become a target, right? So it's, it kind of works, it works both ways. So you got to be prepared for that, right? So back to the phones, like if you're going to be traveling a lot and you're going to be in like Europe or South America or in Asia, you need to make sure you have enough battery for that phone, right? As I experienced in Vegas. So do you have a backup battery? Have you thought about that? Like, you probably need a backup battery. You need to charge your backup battery every night before you leave.
Yeah,
So
and then, yeah, I can see it now. Like, one of those like fun DEF CON juice jacking machines. Like, here, plug in right here with the cable and everything. Those-
now, a lot of people, a lot of times if you're taking a lot of lifts, like I don't always rent a car. I take lifts a lot, or Ubers. They'll have chargers in the Lyft and the Uber, and people will use them. Would not recommend that. Would not recommend that. You don't know. Yeah, you're getting some battery juice, but what are they getting? Are they pulling your data off? Are they putting malware on your phone? You don't know. So I'm a big fan of the backup batteries because you have control of the device and you can plug it in. And yeah, it's a bit of a pain. You've got to either stuff it in your purse and it adds weight, or if you're a guy and you don't carry a purse or a bag, it's stuffing it in your pocket. But it's much better than having your identity stolen or somebody taking out credit cards with your social security number and messing up your credit report, and it's such a pain. The thing is, I don't know if you realize it's such a pain when that happens is having to deal with the credit card company on fraud and then getting your money back and having to go, it's just, it ruins it. You're going on vacation to relax and relieve your stress, right? Worst thing is to come back from a vacation more stressed out than when you showed up, right? That's like, you know,
a vacation for the vacation for the vacation of the vacation and
yeah,
then vacation.
so there's that important stuff. Um, there's nothing wrong with, I always call ahead to the hotel before I book just to ask them what they have there. Websites will say one thing, like they have a pool, they have a hot tub, they have this business lounge. Sometimes you call them, they're like, oh, well, our pool's under renovation, our hot tub's under renovation. Wi-Fi is a little janky because we're getting that upgraded right now. So you want to know all this before you go, right? Because you may be able to, like, I've had to, for the business travels out there, I've had to justify things. I have to book hotels that are a little bit outside of policy, but I'm able to say, hey, I contacted the hotel. They don't have strong Wi-Fi. They don't have a business center. They don't have the ability to do certain things. It's either under renovation, it's been closed or whatever it is. And so I've been able to justify why I need to go to a more expensive hotel to accommodate being operational while I'm on the road. So there's
Yeah.
things to consider on that as well. Um,
You remind me of like some of the Vegas hotels we go to every year for conferences. They only limit you to two two devices to connect to their network.
right,
Mm,
right.
you go big deal, no problem. I'm just gonna use my phone. But where you're positioned inside the hotel, sometimes you have almost zero cell phone coverage at that point. So you're kind of forced to actually use open Wi-Fi.
It's important to understand that like a lot of the capacity isn't driven on summer travelers. It's based on kind of the 9 months of the year when normal business operations are happening. So when you have an influx of people coming to an area, they don't necessarily upgrade the Wi-Fi capacity. So, you're not necessarily going to get the best service regardless because the capacity can only handle so many devices. And you're competing with everyone else. And I mean, talk about like graduation events or summer travel with children and their devices and everything that they're streaming and watching. Um, I mean the capacity gets eaten up real quick. So
Oh, it's kind of funny because you think like the casinos in Vegas, with all the money they're making, they can afford good Wi-Fi.
well, they sure can, but why? Right? The question is why when you can put the money in your bank or like
Or better, nicer, fancier slot
yeah,
machines to get
yeah,
people to spend more
exactly.
money.
Exactly. So and then I always carry a flashlight, like either a headlamp or a flashlight. And that's more so because I've been in situations where the power's just gone out, you know. And it's not relatively common, but it does happen. You just don't know what's going to, like for example, the Southeast, from August to December, it's hurricane season, right? So you get caught in a hurricane, right? Power goes out. They have to shut the power down. Tornadoes hit in the Midwest down to through Texas as well. Power gets shut down. California, where me and Josh are, it's not uncommon to have rolling blackouts because the grid is overtaxed, right? So I
Well,
I bring a flashlight just in case. I've only had to use it a few times, but it makes things a lot easier. And people are like, "Oh, well, your phone, you have a flash on your phone." Well, yeah, you do, but it also drains your battery pretty quick. So, I mean, I don't want to be over reliant on one device for everything, right? I mean, it's because once it's dead, right? If you don't have any means of recharging it, you kind of
well, I was just thinking, like, at least last summer when we were here, we had some record temperatures, but the grid, I think the most that we only had was a flex alert, only because of just the high demand, but it never went to rolling blackouts, even despite record usage, and it was because
yeah,
of good infrastructure being invested into to make it more resilient, like having backup batteries and stuff like that to store excessive power and everything. So when there's peak loads, it's actually pulling it down. So any blackouts were more like equipment, local resident
yeah,
equipment thing. But I'm also minded too, you know, having action plans too, even for your hotel when you're traveling too. So one of the trips when I was working with EA, one night when I was staying at the Sofitel, and the hotel caught fire.
I was in a hotel in DC about 10 years ago, and the fire alarm had a malfunction, and it every 15 minutes it kept going off, and we're talking like from midnight to 4 a.m.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
You know, I'm like, what is going like, and I had an event the next day. I was like, well, I'm not going to sleep. So, I mean, these things happen, right? Like, not every hotel is managed the same, and some
and
things are,
and equipment fails all the time, randomly here and there too. It's not going to fail during business hours. It's going to fail usually at the most inconvenient time.
yeah,
Think about your smoke detector. When does it go off? Usually in the middle of the night, going beep, low battery.
when you're half asleep and you're prepping for a big meeting the next day, right?
Yeah.
So that's happened. The other thing is too is what if you have car trouble, right? Like if you're renting a car and you have car issues, are you aware of the rental car company's policies on this? Do you have a AAA card? Will AAA cover, you know, uh, a rental car? These are things that you should consider because these things happen. Um, Modes of transportation. I mean, I've had to. It's funny, but I've had to actually get on a Lime, which is a little scooter, electrical scooter, and scooter to a meeting because the lift I was in got in a collision and we were stuck in downtown LA traffic. So I would have been fine had there been no collision. I would have got there with 15 minutes to spare. Unfortunately, I had to kind of improvise there. The police had to show up and take statements. By the time they got my statement on what happened and everything, I mean, I had about 10 minutes to get to this meeting, and the traffic was just completely packed. So, here I go, jumping on a line, putting my credit card in and scootering to the meeting. Um, and again, Lime's not in every city. And I think they have Lime and Bird. They have a couple other ones too, but it's not in every city, but it's something to consider. If you're maybe say you're traveling to a city for a concert or a big event, a show or sporting event, um, Ubers and Lyfts can be challenging when there's high demand. I mean, and then a lot of the event venues will push you, like you have to walk a couple blocks away from the venue to get your Lyft and your Uber, or there's a big line and everyone's waiting. So I find the electric scooters are a very convenient way to kind of get out of the area and then get a lift somewhere else. But there's risk with that, right? Like you're on an electric scooter and you're going on public roads.
With no
Um,
helmet.
yeah, so I mean, there's a personal safety risk there, and then on top of that, if you don't know the neighborhoods you're going through, um, there could be a crime element there that's waiting for you, right? So
Yeah.
but you have to be aware of where you're going, what you're doing. I like to plan like how am I going to get from point A to point B? How am I going to get back from point B back to point A? And I usually like to have a stop in between just in case, as I'm going to the event or as I'm leaving the event, if something happens, I have a stop scheduled in there to reassess and make things happen. So just something that I do. And then the other piece of this too is a lot of people kind of they they don't really look at travel insurance. It's kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. I would say I would never tell anyone like what to do. Like, well, you should always have travel. I don't think that's the right answer, but I think depending on the time of the year, where you're going and what you're doing, there are plenty of good uses of travel insurance, and travel insurance itself can help tremendously, especially if I'd say if you don't travel a lot and you don't understand some of the tips of the trade for professional travelers, travel insurance could be a good option for you because if something goes wrong, that typically that travel insurance company is going to help you. They're gonna get on the phone with the airlines and try to get everything squared away and get you a new flight. They're gonna try to locate your bags for you. They're gonna. So um, I would highly consider it if you don't travel much to spend the extra money and get travel insurance because the insurance carriers do a great job of taking care of their customers most of the time. And it's something that if you don't know who to talk to or you don't know how to navigate that, they just do it for you and it makes things a lot smoother. Uh, so that's something that I would consider for a lot of people. And then if you're doing a lot of high adventure stuff, like if you're a mountain climber or you like to surf, do surf trips like myself, or scuba diving, or things like that, or even like skiers or golfers that you have high priced equipment. The travel insurance is good for that because they typically, if your equipment gets lost in transit, they'll give you a stipend to go rent more equipment so you can still enjoy what you're doing, and they'll try to get your equipment to you. Um, and then in the event you get hurt while you're doing whatever fun activity you're doing, if you get the medical evacuation insurance, they'll actually evacuate you to the closest hospital with the Western level of care, and that's important because typically if you're in let's just say a place outside of Western Europe or the United States, um, the medical rules are different. So, if you want to go to the emergency room because say you broke your leg doing something, there's a guarantee of payment required, meaning you don't even get to the front door unless you have a credit card you can put down and guarantee that you can pay for the medical service. If not, they'll pretty much tell you like, well, go find someone else, man. We can't help you. There's a requirement to pay upfront in a lot of other countries. They don't always take U.S. health insurance, so that's an issue too, right? And then on top of that, the typically the local emergency service is just going to take you to the closest hospital. They may or may not speak English. They may or may not speak, they may not be able to communicate with you, right? And they're just going to drop you off front and say thank you. And so having the rescue insurance gets you to a hospital that's commensurate with a Western level of care, and they practice Western medicine. And typically the staff speaks English, and the insurance company can negotiate a rate, or they can put down the credit card. So you're not coming out of pocket for medical treatment if you need it. So it's something else I would consider if you're, well, I like to call a high adventure traveler. You'd like to go out there and experience things and do high adventure stuff. I think that's an important thing you should look into.
I was thinking about back when I was talking about the fire, one of the things I've been trying to do, and I emphasize try, it doesn't I'm not always successful in it, but it's a couple things is knowing evac routes. So at least I look at the diagram in the back of the door that's usually on the hotel room. There's a little route that tells you there, and then trying to count at least how many steps or how many doors am I having to walk to, having a primary and secondary route, knowing like where to go kind of deal. But after that incident at the Sofitel, um, yes, and if you go back to the history, you'll see there's an actual was fire. Someone decided to smoke a cigarette, and it caught the sheets on fire, and then the sprinklers did its job. Um, you know, uh, you know, I think it was like 3 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was about to evac when the alarm silenced itself. So like, okay, maybe false alarms. I didn't, move. 15, 30 minutes later, then the alarms go off again. Like, whoops, maybe I should evacuate. And then only to get a reassurance. Oh no, it's fine. Everything's under control. And then walking downstairs first thing in the morning, all the floors are wet. But yeah. Uh, what was it? But yeah, at the end of the day, some of the things that I took as for self reflection from that was, how easy it is for me to grab my technology like that needs to go, like phones, laptops. I don't want to leave it there because, at that point in time, who knows what's going on, who's in there. Everyone's supposed to be evac out of there. But, it just takes one unscrupulous person. It's like, oh, let me just raid a couple rooms on the way out. And, no one will be all the wiser because no one's looking at that time. I'm also thinking about the fact that, be able to also know where your ID and everything is. So I have a, good habit right now of trying to keep my wallet and at least my cell phones next to each other. So even if my laptop is sitting somewhere else in the room charging or whatever, at least I'm going to grab, at least a set of devices and, a phone. So that way I can, and an ID, so I can walk out, very, very quickly, and everything. And it's helped me actually too, because, when I was in university, and I did non-traditional, I worked first before I went to university. When I went to university, always around spring break, sorry, no, not spring break, always around finals or midterms. If you're in the library studying, someone decides to blow off steam by setting off the fire alarms in the library without fail. And so there was literally, I was making a joke with a colleague in my class, and because I was there every day that week, and this is like a Thursday, and I was like, okay, I don't want the fire alarm to go off tonight. It's like, why? Because it's been going off every single day this week, every time I've been in there. And then the joke was, I'm bad luck because that night it did go off. We were in a study room and we were like studying and then, talking about stuff, and the alarm's like, bam, and like they screamed and I'm jumping. And like, all right. And they're looking at me and it was like, Josh, I hate you right now because it just went off. And then the action is what we do. It's like, we have to evacuate. That's going to be the protocol. They're going to force us to evacuate. So let's spend 30 seconds, just grab our electronics, grab all the sensitive stuff, just quickly pack it in and then we'll leave. And it has helped tremendously, honestly, being able to respond to that and fire. I remember I was teaching at a elementary school, part of a youth program in my area because they just wanted someone to help out for the summer. I'm like, all right, I'll just do it as a pro bono as a favor, because they're only paying like minimum wage. It's like, I'm not gonna make any money on this. But I remember the backfield caught fire all of a sudden. And then like someone came running in and say, "Hey, there's a fire! Like we need to evacuate." So you're kidding? It's like, no, it's not. Is it a fire drill? It's like, no. Okay. And then everyone's like, so like, what do we do? What do we do? It's like, guys, everyone, just unplug your laptop, leave your stuff here. Okay. Just grab your laptop, just put it in your hands. We'll walk out the door with your laptops. Like, if you have cell phones, grab that too. We'll walk out. And I just remember just gently packing my stuff in very nice and slowly. Everyone's like looking like, why are you so calm? I'm like, you guys have done this before.
Yeah. I typically, before I go to bed at night, and maybe, maybe it's just because it's me, I don't know, but I'll typically just pack my backpack. Like I'll put my laptop, chargers. The only thing I really have out, I even put my wallet in there. The only thing I have out really is my phone and the charger. And I'll usually, some people, there's a pro and con of this, but I typically, my luggage itself, like the night before, I'll hang out whatever clothes I'm going to wear the next day. I'll hang it up in the closet, but everything else kind of stays in the luggage, and I zip it up. And that's really just because, to your point, if you got to move quickly, a situation happens, I can grab everything. I can just put my backpack on, grab my phone, charger, wheel my luggage out, and I'm only going to lose one outfit. And it's fine, whatever. Um, you can replace clothes pretty easily. Laptops and phones and memories are a little bit harder to replace. So, um, I'll typically do that. And I'll typically have like my running shoes just sitting out. So if I have to put footwear on real quick, I just slip them on and go. And that's typically because you just don't know. Like you hear a fire alarm or an emergency happens and you have to leave the hotel. You can at least retain as much of the stuff as you need with it. And a lot of times, if it is a serious incident, it's a serious situation, you're not getting back in the hotel anytime soon. So you either got to find another hotel to go sleep in, or find, another place to go. And so if people don't consider, like, if you have medications, if you have prescriptions, and you leave them out in the bathroom or leave them out, you got to get out of that hotel quickly, and all your medications are back in the hotel. Like that's a problem, right? That's an issue that you're gonna have to contend with. So I like to keep everything in my backpack that I need, and then before I go to bed, just keep it all in there, get it all nice and packed up. If I got to bug out, I'm good. I got everything I need, and I don't have to worry about, oh man, my medication. What the hell am I going to do now? I don't. It's in the hotel, and the hotel has been sealed off, and or whatever, right? So, there's that aspect of as well. Speaking of the medications, though, that's actually another good point. Is what happens if you either lose or like you run out of medications while you're on the road, while you're traveling. Like, in the US, it's pretty easy. You just call your doctor, get another prescription refilled, typically, and then find the closest pharmacy to you and then go pick it up, right? But what about if you're in a foreign country? What about
Yeah.
if you're in a disaster situation and you have to leave, or something like that? So what if it's 2 a.m. and you got to get a new prescription filled because you don't have it? Um, Again, that's why I recommend the travel insurance and the medical rescue insurance, because you can always call somebody and be like, hey man, my medications are stuck in the hotel room and I'm not in the hotel room because there's an issue, but I need my medications. Can you guys help me out? And they typically have a network of doctors that they can call in a prescription. Either get you to the hospital or pick it up from the hospital, 24/7 hospital, or find a pharmacy close by us 24/7 and get you your medication. So some
Yeah.
things to consider, I mean, I know a lot of people who have a lot of medications typically will pack them. They're pretty diligent, but sometimes bags get lost. Sometimes things happen. God forbid.
Why are people packing always their medications, like the most vital medications on checked bags? That always baffles me.
You should never do that. I mean, you should never do that because the check bags can get lost. And now, if you have, like, my mom has blood pressure medication, other members of my family have like their glucose stuff and everything else for their diabetes. It's like that bag gets lost, your medication's lost with the bag. So it's going to be an expensive endeavor to get that stuff back. And then you're having to deal with a place that you're not familiar with and trying to find medication. So you should always try to keep your medication, um, with you in your backpack or your travel bag, that's not checked, because that can be disastrous. Especially, the other things too, like sometimes flights get delayed while you're in the plane, right? You're
Yep.
sitting in the plane. Like, this has happened to me multiple times where I've been stuck in a plane for an hour, hour and a half, and you consider, okay, if the flight's 2 or 3 hours, I just added an hour and a half to that whole travel time. Am I going to hit a medication window? Do I, like, well, what am I going to do? Like, they're not going to let you off the plane. You got to wait till you land. What are you going to do? So imagine that happens, and then they lose your bag on the back end too. Now you're in a serious situation.
Yeah. The one thing I always worry about too, by the way, is when I travel, all my RFID devices too, my RFID. So usually, if I'm a rental car, it's usually the keyless cars with the push to start, or passport. Have one of those. I always worry about that because I'm wondering like what's going to happen.
Yeah,
Uh, and so I usually nowadays, and I'm trying to be diligent about it. Doesn't mean I'm successful. I'm trying to be diligent about it. Is always travel with a Faraday bag.
yeah. I definitely recommend the Faraday bag. And they've got a ton of different models that you can get them on Amazon for relatively cheap.
Yeah,
Um,
I just get the ones my friend Jack sells because
yeah,
he because I dropped my keys the other day into it just to see if my push to start car would recognize it, and it doesn't. So that's kind of cool. Uh,
you bring
it
up
was
a good point on the rental cars too, though. There's if you're not familiar with how to do a valet key, um, that's something that you should consider looking into. Watch a YouTube video. Um, that
I don't
way,
think I don't think you can do a valet key these days with the push to starts.
well, I think because the valet key on the push to starts, you basically remove the key from the key fob, and then you have the key fob and the valet has it. But when you remove the key from the key fob, at least in theory, they can only start the car push to start with the key inserted. So,
Assuming your car actually has a keyhole to turn and everything like
right,
that. Like
it's, that's been
my car does not have
yeah.
that.
So it's kind of some of the newer models. I'm not quite sure what the fix is, um, but
it's it's valet mode actually.
yeah, valet mode.
And it's like when you turn on valet mode, you use it through the console, like on the interface or on the app, and you set parameters like you cannot exceed more than 25 miles per hour. You can't leave a certain range or distance from the area, and if it violates any of those parameters, it will give you a push notifications. Hey, your car is doing 65 miles per hour, like 3 miles away. Okay, why?
But yeah, I'd also say, if you're gonna leave your luggage in your car, I would take the backpack with the electronics in it with you wherever you go.
Yeah,
Um, and
that's totally me.
yeah, I mean, it there's a risk versus reward here, right? If you trust the garage, if you trust the security of the garage and the valet vendor, then maybe you leave it in the back if you're walking through like a unsafe area. Like, I know, Bay Area, East Oakland, if I have meetings out there, I typically won't walk around with a backpack, because I'm actually raising my risk profile in that specific area, in that specific context where I'm actually making myself a target because I have a backpack. So in that situation, typically find a garage that I know is vetted, and I lock the car down, keep everything in the back, cover everything up. Um,
I usually just leave it in the office if I can. And
Yeah,
most of the clients have been good about, letting me have a conference room or like a cubicle for the week. And I just, use that as my ground base. So like bag comes in once, which is in the morning when I walk into the office, and bag leaves with me at night when I go home to my hotel room.
and that's another. I wouldn't recommend just walking around with a backpack or a bag,
Yeah.
especially if you're in touristy areas, things like that. I mean, it's not recommended.
Well,
Uh,
you saw me at ISC West. Even I still carried my backpack with me. Most of the time, even those additional like 20 pounds on my back.
yeah,
I still prefer to carry it just because of just at least is within visual eyesight of where I am.
yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, conferences. I think it's fine. Just walking out on the street. Mm, maybe not the smartest idea, but also, you mean, you've got to. There's a risk versus reward on everything, right? I mean, you got to have your stuff with you. So, man,
I I think that's kind of the thing. It's like I just keep thinking about um I just keep thinking about what is it uh you're still even in tourist areas, even in Las Vegas, you're still
have your stuff with you.
you're
So,
you're still doing that. You're still traveling with gear, at least briefly in between like parking and your conference area, and you'll walk to the tourist areas. You don't have much of a choice in that.
no, you don't. You don't. But it's I guess reducing that transit time between car and venue is important. And
Yeah.
you know, uh, let's see what else travel
Well,
tips.
let's just not just forget like small things too, like making that investment into, let's say, global entry, for example, or TSA pre-check. I find that super helpful because I'm not having to expose my gear or what's in my bag
Yeah.
unnecessarily, except sometimes I actually have to because I'm going on a trip where I have to pack dense electronics, and they just come out as a big old black mass through the machines. And then the question is, hey, I have dense electronics. Are you guys okay? And then they make it this judgment call like, no, you can run it through, or yes, we have to take things out. I let them decide at that point. But it's better than playing the musical chairs of having to, oh, you didn't tell us, so yeah, and everything.
And then if you are checking in sports gear, or if you have like an oversized bag or something, like I travel with firearms quite a bit when I go to go shoot out of state. Um, and so you should probably plan. So normal outside of summer travel, I'd say you'd want to be there about 2 hours early, because there's a whole another check-in process for oversized equipment. Um, you know,
Firearms.
equipment, firearms. You've got to go through a whole nother process. So, um, be unfortunately, you got to be prepared with the firearms. Um, you're gonna have to unlock your case a lot of the times, and show them that everything's unloaded, and they have to. Most airlines typically will inspect the firearms, or at least look at them and make sure that there's the ammunition and the firearms are separate from each other. You might also get an additional screening from TSA, and what they're primarily going to be doing is trying to see if they can pry open your container, and if the locks are actually effective, if someone can get their hand in there and grab the firearm and try to pull it out. So you need to check that. I always have a spare key for the firearms in my backpack, just in case. In a case too. I don't leave it loose. I leave it in a case. And then I have one on my keychain. That way, in the event my keychain gets lost, or gets stolen or something like that, I have a backup for the sensitive gear in a box. So I mean, I don't know if 3 hours is the right answer, depending on the airport, but I can tell you, if I'm flying with guns, it's typically going to be about. I'm usually showing up minimum 2 hours early, and that's just been my experience with that. And then when you do that, whether it's sports equipment, oversized gear, heavy bags, firearms, you're not going to pick up your luggage from the standard baggage claim area. You're going to have to go to the oversized luggage area, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have to present an ID to show that you're actually the owner of that equipment. So be prepared for that. And it typically comes out after everything else is out. It typically comes out. So you're gonna have to plan for a longer stay at baggage claim. Now with the firearms themselves, um, if you're traveling internationally, customs will sometimes hold them for 24 hours. So
Oh,
you gotta
ah,
be ready for that one. You have to have there's a whole bunch of paperwork that goes in when you're traveling international with firearms on customs paperwork. Um, and customs basically releases it to the airport so you can go retrieve it. So that's a process in itself. Again, why I recommend travel insurance. If you're traveling with sports equipment, firearms, whatever, what have you, they can help get that stuff released from customs quickly. If there's any issues with the paperwork, they can help resolve that quickly. So something to consider. Also considering if if you're flying into a foreign country, or even Hawaii for that matter, you have to declare how much cash you have on you, and you have to declare what kind of if you have any fruits or animal products, live animals that you're bringing. Um, so if you have a dog, if you have a service dog, or you're bringing your pet,
more
you're gonna
fun.
plan for additional screening, plan for more scrutiny, plan for more things to happen. Um, and I mean, it's just part of the process. So um, get ready for all that fun stuff. If you're traveling with live animals, or if you have, I mean, I think I brought some. I think I think it was some bananas I had in my backpack when I got to Hawaii, and I was eating them on the plane. I had two left, and they're like, "Oh yeah, bananas." They just took the bananas and just took them, threw them away, and I was upset because I really wanted my banana. But you know, Hawaii has their rules, Department of Agriculture, and they're very strict. They're very strict about it, and then it's fine. I mean, I understand why. I mean, they have to protect their agriculture industry, and you'll find that to be the case with a lot of different countries if you're coming in with live fruits. My parents will typically pack their food on a long flight to Thailand or India or China. And so they'll be eating, they don't like the airplane food, so they bring their own food. And if they don't eat whatever they don't eat on the plane, it pretty much gets the customs agent simply toss it, So um, but that does cause additional screenings, right? So
Well,
um,
I'm reminded of, every time I've gone to Hawaii, one of the last things I always have to do is not the security screening, but uh the
the fruit screening, yeah,
the fruit screening. And I'm talking about going out, not
yeah,
coming in. I'm talking about going out.
yep.
And they still do it. And I've gotten stopped every single time I've gone out, not because I'm bringing any fruits, but I always have a pink box of malasadas, and he looks like, "What's this, malasadas?" And they bring it. Oh yeah, it's malasadas. All right, you're good to go. my reaction is, "You're not going to scan it? Nope. we can smell it. We know it. You're good to go."
Masalas are good. Coconuts, no. Masala.
But that's the funny is, like, I've always been able to bring back malasadas, and then, like, been sealed and everything, so they've always been pretty
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
The people there. Let's switch gears. Let's talk about the what's left behind, which is an empty hole in the office too.
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, it's we all need PTO. We all need to recharge our batteries, right? But when typically when especially kind of the more senior you are, when you unplug for a week, um, you leave a lot of gaps with people who are still working, right?
Yep.
So having a kind of a succession plan or a communication plan um, ready to go, and doing the out of office messages, I think, is super important. Um, Giving people a point of contact to reach out to in your absence is important. Um, this last point is controversial, but it is what it is. Some people suggest putting your cell phone number on the out of office message. I'm of the opinion, well, if you've done one and two well, then you don't need three. And it allows you to kind of like unplug. But then there's also well, what if it's an emergency? We need to get a hold of you. Okay, fair enough. So, um, you know, point three, use your discretion. Some organizations make you do it. It's fine. Me, when I go on vacation, I go on vacation. I don't want to talk to anyone or see anyone or answer emails. So I don't leave my cell phone on there. If they really need to get a hold of me, they will. The people who need to get a hold of me have my cell phones, but that's just me. But I don't want to speak for every organization out there. But yeah, I mean, so there's that aspect of it. There's also, just making sure that you clean your plate off as best as you can before you head out. So you're not leaving anyone in a lurch.
Yeah. I was thinking that, what you always can do is you can get uh, a Google Voice number, and then you can just give that out.
That's also true. Yeah, you can that's an option.
And they're
I
free. So, I mean, just use it for the time being, or at least have a phone. And it's like, if you need to ring me on like a Microsoft Teams or Zoom or something like that, or message me. I'm there, and I'll call you back, kind of deal. And then
Yeah.
just make sure that you are monitoring it, relatively diligently. And in this day and age, it's kind of hard not to, given that they have apps and they have phone calling and everything through that. So it's kind of, unusual not to be at least responsive, if they need to. And even have in like built-in messaging, like even Zoom has
Yeah.
started using some
Zoom's
of
got it.
the Teams
WhatsApp's
chat, Teams chatting
popular.
functions. Yeah. So it's just very, it's just there. I'm always concerned about too is, there's always the institutional knowledge there, or the question, maybe not so much institutional knowledge, because institutional knowledge is generally a good thing in the sense that there's a lot of intricacies, knowing where to tap. But I'm always worried about from a perspective of fraud. What happens in a fraud perspective? Like what happens when you're gone? And I'm reminded of an article just now, as I'm talking. Um, some lunch lady was in charge of all school lunches, but then she was literally ordering extra food on top of that, intercepting it, and then selling it off. And she just happened to go on vacation, forgot to do that, and then had all this extra delivery of food, and no one could figure out what it is. And that's what tripped the process and the investigation. Oh yeah, she's been buying food and selling it basically this entire time, and yeah, it was an interesting scandal on that one. But that's the whole point, is that 2 week break is supposed to allow you some time to understand where your broken processes are, but it also allows you to help you identify potentially fraudulent activity that is going on too. So, there is an actual incentive for them to, fully disconnect these days, because it helps you figure out, what things are working, what things aren't working, and then when things are just completely, um, uh, I wouldn't say it's a cover up, but I would just say it's questionable, like the lunch lady orders. And you wouldn't know because they are high enough on the totem pole that you wouldn't see it until the process breaks officially, because they're fantastic at covering it up.
And that's been an issue. I mean, that's actually, and so I think that's a kind of a good point on, broadcasting that you're going on vacation, right? On social media or on LinkedIn or, other things. If you're a key player, sit in the C-suite, um, it's not always good to do that, simply because we've seen cases of impersonation, right? Where, C-suite posts that they're going on vacation for 2 weeks or whatever it is, or they're going to be traveling somewhere. Um, and then what ends up happening is somebody impersonates that person and reaches out to employees back at the company and says, "Hey, I got stranded. Can you wire me, $1,000, or can you send me a gift card?" And it's a big fraudulent thing. And the poor employee is like, "Well, I thought you were in trouble. I know you were going on vacation." And then the C level was like, "Why would you do that? Like, why would
Yeah.
you?" why would you like, why didn't you call me? Well, I thought it was urgent, and so there's been that kind of stuff that's happened. Um, so I, it,
They follow the procedure, but they can't get a hold of you because you're like 5 miles offshore scuba diving at that point in
yeah,
time.
yeah. So there's certain things that can occur like that. And it's it's challenging, but
And this is why we can't have nice things.
I think the other thing is too, with regard to that is, you know, we kind of talked about like the institutional knowledge, kind of goes with you, right, as you travel. Um, and to your point, you can kind of, I think if you plan for it and you look at like this is an opportunity for me to kind of pressure test my team and see what's gonna break and what's not gonna break, right? And so I think that's always it's always good to kind of use employees going on PTO as a means to kind of check and see where you guys are at, like what can realistically happen, what can't happen, right?
Yeah.
So and then figure out where the process broke down and use it as a learning opportunity. Um, if nothing breaks, then maybe you're not as important as you thought you were. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally and completely possible, and, if you did your job well, you know, you should be, I wouldn't say indispensable or irreplaceable, but you should at least be able to, the world should continue to spin and move on, even when you're not there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on stuff that worried about inside? I'm always thinking about, I had a friend who's traveling right now, and he was lambasting the policy of the organization for using Concur. And his whole basis was whoever configured Concur, he does not concur with them because they did not turn all the right features on inside Concur. So he ended up he's his routing is Los Angeles to the East Coast, and then East Coast back. But he for whatever strange reason, it won't allow him to do a multi-stop flight because he needs to stop by somewhere to visit a client in another city. So ending up, he's having to quite literally piecemeal his flights across multiple airlines, and he's like, "Why couldn't just let me use one airline concurrently?" So it's like from here to I think it was the Carolinas. So it's Delta. And then from there to Denver, it's going to be United. And then from United back to LA, it's going to be Southwest Airlines. and and that's including the layover and everything in between. And the other frustrating part too, by the way, the flight that goes from the East Coast, the Carolinas back to LA, if he did a go straight shot as it was he was originally planning for, it would have been a 12-hour flight.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What the hell?" It's like, no. It's like I can go to Asia faster than I can go to than I can get back home. This is raw. So he
Well,
was he was laughing and raging for a good hour and a half at the stupidity.
wish I had, a good fix for that. Unfortunately, not all travel booking software slash expense reporting software is created equally. Um, Concur's gotten a lot better over the years, but it still has its issues. So, and that's another thing. I mean, you should always check in with your travel department if you have one at your company and just understand what like, hey, here's the situation.
Well, you should let them know. Like one of my SOPs, I leave a general area where I'm going to be with my team, even though I'm at the apex. But I just generally leave them. This is where my general hotspots are going to be, and where I'm going to, my country. Don't have to tell them the hotel or anything like that, but just give them a idea of where things are. So if there is an incident, that they may be able to reach out and help you, be a extra set of eyes to help you get out of somewhere or situation.
Yep, absolutely. Um, I think we covered pretty much most of it. I'm sure something will pop in my head right after we sign off. But I mean, generally speaking, I think like the big key is with travel in general, especially if you're, going to a place that you're not familiar with. It's just planning and understanding what's going on over there. And having a plan, and making sure you understand all the resources you have available to help you through that situation because um more often than not, even if it's not a big issue, when it comes to travel, everybody has an issue at some point. Um, and it's just part of the game. It's just part of being in transit. So the more planning you do on the front end, typically, the smoother it can be, right?
Yeah, I agree with that because the times I've been traveling, as long as I had a framework semblance of an idea of what I need to do, it's always gotten me through any rough turbulence and everything like that. Like my South Carolina trip was a good example where I had at least some basic plans. The only fumbling part was that it didn't account for everyone trying to board alternative flights and everything like that. So nothing I can do is just beyond my control at that point because everyone, when you have a bunch of planes getting canceled for weather, everyone's trying to get any flight possible out the door. Like, all right, nothing you can do there.
Yeah, no, and that's the tough part. So
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up for this week. So I think the big wrap up is travel is going to be up ish this year,
yep.
probably, and even if it's not up ish, stuff to consider when you are doing travel. Think about your electronics, your devices, identifications, medications, letting people know. Am I missing anything else?
Just have a plan.
Yeah, have it. Yeah, and don't assume that where your locations are safe as you think they are. And then, of course, take advantage of the gaps. Just to understand where your broken processes are and any illicit and fraudulent activities. Uh, Hopefully, you don't have any.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, but we have a great summer of travel with no incidences at all, and everything's good. So
Well, I mean, think about it. We also have a lot of stuff happening in next few weeks. So it's what
we're in graduation season right now.
graduation season, but aren't we also heading towards the All-Star games for baseball?
Uh,
And then also
well,
the
we're in the championships right now, or we're in the I think semifinals for the NBA All-Star weekend. With baseballs will be coming up.
World Series.
World Series. I think we got some Formula One and FIFA events occurring as well.
Yeah, so lots of opportunities for travels. All I'm hearing for anybody who's a fan of a sport or having to travel for conferences, like you and I will be probably start traveling again for conferences again.
Yeah, starting next Monday at 8 a.m.
Ah, ah,
for the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks or so. So, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, travel can be fun. It can be exciting. There's a lot of, things you can do,
yep.
just be smart, be safe, have a plan, do your due diligence, and just make sure that you're communicating with the people around you, loved ones. I'll put a little link to on express kidnapping scams because that happens when you travel too. We didn't really cover that too much, but that can, you know, your family can be scammed essentially by your absence. So just make sure you're communicating with people and people close to you know where you need to be or where you're supposed to be, and the people you work with have everything they need to work without you for a little bit. So
Yeah, sounds good. All right, folks, that's it for this week, and we'll see you on our next episode. And until then, that's Al. I'm Josh, and we'll see you next time. Talk to you.